What is the parable of the unjust judge? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Luke on walking through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Luke chapter 18. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 8. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Luke chapter 18, beginning at verse 1. Then he spoke a parable to them that men always ought to pray and not lose heart, saying, There was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God nor regard man. Now there was a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, Get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while, but afterwards he said within himself, Though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Then the Lord said, Hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? Between the end of chapter 17 and the beginning of chapter 18, there appears to be a context break. At the end of chapter 17, Jesus was teaching his disciples about the destruction of Jerusalem, and when they saw the signs coming, they were to flee, for if they didn't, they would die. Coming now to chapter 18, we don't see Jesus telling a parable concerning the topic about being watchful for the signs of the destruction of Jerusalem. We see him tell a parable about a completely different topic, persistence in prayer. As we have seen through our studies of the Gospels thus far, we know that Jesus was a man of prayer. He would often go to a quiet place and spend hours praying. In many different places in the Gospels, he taught his disciples about the importance of prayer, and when we get to the epistles, we will see that that point is being brought out often. But sometimes when we pray, we will ask God for something once, and if what we ask for doesn't happen, then we won't ask for that again. We assume God said no, and therefore that settles it. Jesus is going to tackle that notion head on in his parable. This parable begins by introducing us to two characters, a widow and an unjust judge. This judge was unjust because he did not fear God and he did not regard man, meaning that he really didn't care about man's problems and simply did what he felt like. If the man had feared God, he would have obeyed God and loved his neighbor as himself. But alas, he did not. So he did not approach his job as a judge in the way that he should have. As for the widow, we do not know much about her, only that she was a widow who had been wronged. She went to this judge seeking justice. Note, she did not take personal vengeance against her adversary. She followed the proper way and sought that the civil authorities take care of her problem. The unjust judge, however, said he did not regard man, and he refused the widow's request. However, instead of giving up, she persisted, approaching this judge and demanding justice. I can almost picture it in my head as this woman coming up every day to see this judge, pleading with him to act, and each day he refusing. But finally, the judge had enough of her coming to him continually, so knowing that she would never stop, did what she asked. Jesus' point, as it related to prayer, was that if this unjust judge responded to persistence and eventually avenged this widow speedily, why do you think that God won't avenge his own elect who cry out to him day and night, though he bears long with them? Jesus said that God would avenge them speedily. Before moving on, we must say that Jesus was not comparing God with an unjust judge, nor was he saying that God was unjust. He was saying that if a man who is unjust can eventually do what is right when someone is persistent, then you can know that God who is just will always do what is right, but his saints are to persist in prayer. So Jesus is telling his disciples to persist. I believe this parable is the best illustration from Jesus that the future is not already written in stone. When we pray to God, if he says no, that isn't necessarily the final word. We should continue praying to see if God won't change his mind. Now, perhaps God won't change his mind, but perhaps he will. Now, why would God ask his saints to be persistent? So that they can develop faith. If God simply gave us everything we asked for, our view of God would be like that of a genie, there to grant us however many wishes we want. However, being taught to do without can make us appreciate what we have and learn to become more reliant on God for our blessings. And that's really what the punchline of this parable in verse 8 is. When Jesus says, but when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? God will avenge his saints and maintain justice, but will his saints continue in faith and persist in prayer until Jesus comes again? The former is guaranteed, The latter is not. Let's therefore grow in faith by learning to persist in prayer to God, knowing that He is the righteous judge who will always do what is just. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Luke chapter 18, verses 9 to 14, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.